Welcome to Rugby Borough Council's Licensing and Safety Committee meeting this evening, Thursday the 10th of March. I am Councillor Julia Barrow, Chair of this committee. The meeting is being web streamed to the public through the Council's YouTube channel. During the meeting, if you wish to speak, please use the push to talk button on the microphone in front of you. This will allow the camera to pan in your general direction. Before we begin the formal agenda, I'm obliged to read out the following fire notice. There is no fire drill scheduled in the building this evening. If the fire alarm sounds, then please could I ask you that you make your way out of the building, down the main staircase and out of the main doors of the Town Hall and congregate at the entrance to Caldecott Park. An officer of the council will give instructions on when it is safe to return to the building. Moving on to the agenda, the first item of business is to approve the minutes of the Licensing and Safety Committee held on the 25th of January 2022 and Licensing Subcommittee held on 3rd of February 2022. Could I have a proposer, please? And a seconder? Thank you. And a show of hands from members, please. Second item is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. I have apologies from Councillors Brader and Mrs Garcia.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. A. Non-pecuniary interest as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors. No. B. Pecuniary interest as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors. No. And C. Notice under Section 106, Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax. Right. Agenda item 4 is the review of the taxi licensing fees. Could I ask you to present the report, John?
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Today we have present myself, Licensing and Parking Team Leader Zulfikar Rahman, and our colleague from Finance, Lisa Marshall. Before I start, I'd like to wish a big thank you to Lisa for the hard work she has put in towards this, which has been integral to getting this report to you this evening. Lisa is here this evening should you wish to have any financial queries surrounding the report. The report today is in regard to the review of the taxi licensing fees for drivers, hackney carriage, private hire vehicle and private hire operator licences. A comprehensive and detailed review of the costs of delivering taxi licensing services has been carried out and new fees proposed that reflect both the full staffing costs and running service as well as the support service costs. The proposed fees can be seen in Appendix A of the report. The Council's income and expenditure since 2015-16, when the fees were last reviewed, has been considered and is detailed in the Table 1 of the report. The ring-fenced nature of the budget requires the Council to consider its income and expenditure over more than 1 year, so this should be clearly evidenced. The recommendation today is that the committee at this stage it be recommended to the Council that the proposed fees and charges set out in Appendix A are approved for public consultation. Section 70 of the Act sets out statutory consultation requirements in relation to a vehicle and operator licence fees, which requires a notice to be published in the local paper and at least 28 days provided for comments to be made. A copy of the notice advertising the increased fees must also be deposited at the Council's offices and be available for inspection by the public at all reasonable times without payment. While Section 53 of the Act does not require the Council to follow the public consultation process in relation to the driver licence fees, it is considered best practice to follow the same process out as in Section 70 of the Act for the vehicle and operator licences. Therefore, all fees will be published in line with Section 70 of the Act, if approved. Thank you.
Licensing team and the finance team have worked extensively on this report, and I know that legal have had their input as well. Is there any member who would like to raise any questions of the officer? Councillor Byrne.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've had a good look at Appendix A and also Table 1, which shows the income and the costs, and of course a loss simply can't be ignored. I think it was 86,000 over the period. I just wondered if...
Excuse me, Councillor Byrne, could you speak up or
Yes, sorry.
direct... Thank you.
Is it not coming through loud now?
Not to me.
Oh, right, I'll speak louder. I just wondered if the officer could please give some indication as to how the increases in costs were compiled. At first glance, they look pretty substantial, don't they, on Appendix A, but I do appreciate it spans, what is it, 6 or 7 years or thereabouts. But I'm just wondering, was it multiples of CPI per annum or salary increases? There must be a number of factors that went into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's been done on a cost recovery basis. So what we did, myself and the licensing team, we looked at every license fee in detail and looked at the process involved for every single license. So the application process and administration costs have been done differently for each of the fees. Some of the processes will obviously have changed since the last review, which was in 2015, so it has obviously been 7 years. As you say, some of the staffing costs and other costs will have gone up during that time. The review has been done over a 3-year period, the last 3 financial years, so we've averaged the data over that period of time in order to come up with these fees. As you say, some of the increases are substantial, but that is because of no increases for 7 years. And also it ensures that each of the licenses is correctly done with the process involved in that license. So some of them have differences, and the differences are reflected in those costs.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of questions from me. Alluded to in the opening remarks, and I have read the report, but as I was going through and the executive plus non-executive requirement, I was just wondering if we could clarify whether it is a statutory requirement for the council to review. I know you alluded to once it's triggered, there's a statutory requirement to consult, but is there a statutory requirement to review? And I think, building on what Councillor Byrne was saying, I think the thing that stuck out from me in the report is the 7 years since the last review, and just looking at whether a set period or a consistent period for review is something that we should be doing rather than an ad hoc, it's 7 years and let's review. I'm sure there's other factors in play, but would a consistent cycle of reviews be helpful going forward? Thank you.
Yes, I agree it would be helpful to review more regularly in future. This review has taken quite a long time because it's the first time we've done it in this level of depth, I believe. And we have used an external consultant, taxi specialist as well, who has verified the sort of detail that we've gone into with this. I appreciate it has taken quite a while, but I agree it will be better to do this on a regular basis. Now that we've got the initial work set up, I think it will be easier moving forward for all parties concerned. I imagine, I think we have initially discussed doing it every 3 years, in line with the 3-year period that we've just looked at.
Yeah, sorry, through you, Chair. I was just going to come back on it. Yeah, the point I didn't make was Appendix A. If you look through, I was trying to look through the cycles of the licences, etc., and that's obviously at 3 years for the driver licence, which seemed the longest period within the paperwork to hold a licence. So would that offer, a more consistent period to review, but understanding that a lot of work goes into it and it's not so simple, but thank you for that. And if anyone could come back just on the statutory requirement to review overall, that would be interesting to know. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, there's no statutory requirement to review at any set time period. It's just that the fees have to be cost recovery. So it's in our interest to have a regular review period so that we are recovering our costs rather than operating at a loss.
Yeah, from the chair, that would be something that I would look for in the future. Councillor Mrs. Roodhouse.
Yeah, question for John. How long is the public consultation, and then how long before it comes back to licensing after that?
Thank you. The public consultation is 28-day period, and I may have to refer back to Sarah on that one, on the return.
Thank you, John. Through you, Chair. Depending on the two types of fees, one of the fees in relation to the operator's licence, if during the consultation period there are no objections or all objections are withdrawn, then they are automatically adopted by virtue of how the legislation operates. They wouldn't need to come back to Licensing Safety Committee or Council for adoption. If there are objections to those fees, then they would need to come back, and the driver's fees have to come back anyway because there's no automatic adoption provision for those. So that will realistically be the next municipal year, and we're probably looking at July until they come in, I think, with the schedule of meetings we're looking at the moment.
Are there any other questions for the officers or any other speakers? Councillor Byrne.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wondered if John, you had any idea how the proposed charges compare to other similar-sized authorities who will be licensing. I might have missed it, but I can't see any view or comment about how it compares to other authorities. Thank you.
If I can answer that one, we did have a look at some other authorities' fees. However, they were massively varying across all authorities. There was no similarities, and I think that's bound to be the case because of the cost recovery nature. So it will depend on each authority's costs, staff costs, other overheads, and also how many licences they are likely to get. So it's very difficult to get a like-for-like comparison, and that's the reason we decided not to include it in the report, because we wasn't sure that it would be useful in this matter. Thank you.
Okay, well, if there isn't anything further, the recommendation in front of us is that the review is recommended to full council, that the reviewed fees are subject to public consultation in accordance with statutory obligations and best practice. So if I could have a show of hands for that option. That is unanimous. Thank you, and that concludes our business. IT, could you stop the live streaming, please?